desert is a liar. It promises emptiness. A vast, unbroken nothing where you can lose yourself in the hum of tires on asphalt or the faint crackle of a radio struggling to hold a signal. But it's never truly empty. Out on Highway 95, just past the faded edges of Tonopah, Nevada, the silence isn't a comfort. It's a mask. It cloaks something older than the mountains, something that doesn't blink, doesn't breathe, but watches all the same. Aaron Winstone found that out in 2008, on a night that turned a truck stop burger into the opening act of a nightmare he'd carry for years. He was 38 then, a long-haul trucker whose life was a ledger of miles logged and paychecks cashed. A man who thought he knew the rules of the road. He didn't. This isn't your typical horror yarn. No slashers lurking in the sagebrush. No crimson splatter to jolt you awake. It's subtler, colder, the kind of terror that creeps into your marrow when you realize the stars overhead might not be stars at all. Here at the Forbidden Excavation, we sift through the shadows of the unexplained, unearthing stories too strange to dismiss, too real to ignore. Aaron's tale is our starting point, a thread in a web of encounters that spans decades and deserts, each one whispering the same warning. We're not alone, and whatever's out there has plans. Settle in. This is a long, dark ride through a landscape that doesn't forgive. The truck stop that whispered trouble. Picture it. A late autumn night in 2008, the air crisp with the bite of desert chill, the sky a deep indigo bruised with streaks of fading light. Tonopah squats on the map like an afterthought, a cluster of low-slung buildings dwarfed by the endless Nevada sprawl, sand stretching to the horizon, broken only by the brooding silhouettes of distant mountains. Aaron had just unloaded a shipment of tires at a warehouse on the town's edge, a job that left his hands gritty with rubber dust and his back aching from hours behind the wheel. His rig, a battered Freightliner with a cab patched together by duct tape and stubbornness, rolled into a truck stop off Highway 95, a lonely outpost where neon flickered like a dying pulse against the night. The place was a relic, its asphalt lot cracked and pitted, its diner a shrine to faded Americana. Inside, the air smelled of stale coffee and fryer grease, the counters worn smooth by years of elbows and spilled mugs. A jukebox stood silent in the corner, its glass smudged with fingerprints from a decade past, while a waitress with hollow eyes and a name tag reading Darlene shuffled between tables. Aaron ordered a burger, greasy, overcooked, the kind of meal that sits heavy in your gut, and traded a few words with her. "Long night?" she asked, her voice flat. "Always is," he replied, forcing a grin. It was the kind of exchange that filled the silence without meaning much, a ritual of the road. Back at his truck, parked at the lot's farthest edge, the world felt quieter than it should. The other rigs loomed dark and still, their drivers either asleep or too worn out to stir. Usually, there'd be the low murmur of engines cooling, the occasional laugh or curse drifting from an open window, but tonight, nothing. Just the wind, faint and restless, brushing against the cab like a whisper he couldn't quite hear. Aaron chalked it up to exhaustion. 18 hours on the road will do that to you. It was a good excuse, a shield against the unease prickling at the base of his skull. He climbed into the sleeper cab, a cramped nook of stained mattress and rumpled blankets, and drew the curtains tight, shutting out the truck stop's feeble glow. He'd barely settled, his boots still on, when it started, a hum low and insistent, threading through the air like a needle. It wasn't loud, not at first, but it rattled deep in his chest, a vibration that echoed the thrum of a concert bass line he'd felt once in Reno years back. He shifted, muttering, "Another truck pulling in," and parted the curtains with a finger. The lot stared back, empty, his own reflection a pale ghost in the glass. Beyond, the desert stretched black and featureless. No headlights, no movement. "Power lines, maybe?" he grumbled, though the nearest ones were half a mile off, their faint buzz a familiar companion on other nights. This was different, unplaceable, alive. He shoved earplugs in, the cheap foam kind that never quite worked, and willed sleep to take him. The hum lingered, a guest that refused to leave, coiling tighter around his ribs, the light that broke the dark. Sleep came in fragments, A shallow drift broken by a jolt that wasn't the truck's usual groan. The vibrations returned, sharper now, not just in the cab but in the air, the ground, a primal shudder that seemed to rise from the earth itself. The hum swelled, a chorus of unseen voices, and with it came a flickering white light, sharp, staccato, turning the sleeper into a strobe-lit cage. Aaron scrambled to the front seat, heart hammering against his ribs, his breath fogging the windshield. He half expected some jackass with floodlights, a prankster parked ahead to mess with tired truckers. But the highway stretched bare before him, a ribbon of asphalt swallowed by shadow, the truck stop a mute cluster of shapes bathed in that unnatural glow. He rubbed his eyes, willing it to be a trick of fatigue, but the light pulsed relentless, casting jagged shadows across the dash. Then he saw it, hovering above the desert, 50 yards out, a massive triangular craft, its edges glowing faintly, like embers smoldering beneath a layer of ash. It wasn't a helicopter, not a plane, no rotor whine, no jet roar, just silence as it rotated with a precision that mocked physics. It moved deliberately, inspecting the ground below, a predator sizing up prey. Aaron's hands tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles whitening, his voice a whisper, "Nope, nope, nope." The word looped, a futile shield against the impossible. Panic clawed up his throat, raw and animal. He had to get out. Away from that thing, back to the highway, back to something he could understand. The key turned, the engine roared, a guttural protest against the night, and he threw the truck into gear. Tires screeched, clawing at the pavement. The exit 30 feet ahead, a lifeline in the dark. He didn't make it. The light surged, a blinding tide that swallowed the cab, drowning sound, motion, everything. The truck stopped. Not stalled, not slowed. Stopped dead, as if a giant hand had pinned it in place. Aaron could feel his body, the sweat slicking his palms, the thud of his pulse in his ears, but it wouldn't move. His fingers twitched, useless, his lungs locked mid-breath. He couldn't scream, couldn't blink, couldn't do anything but sit there, a statue in a flood of white. Then the world blinked out. One moment he was in the cab, the next he was gone, yanked from reality like a page torn from a book. The room beyond reality. Cold hit first. Not the sharp, familiar sting of a Nevada night, but a sterile, bone-deep chill that seeped into him, a violation of warmth itself. Aaron's eyes fluttered open, gritty and slow, adjusting to a light that came from everywhere and nowhere. A sterile glow that left no shadows, no edges, just a seamless expanse of illumination. He was in a circular room, its walls metallic, gleaming with a faint shimmer, no visible seams or joints, as if forged from a single, impossible mold. The floor beneath him was smooth, unyielding, its surface faintly warm against his palms as he pushed himself up. He wasn't alone. 3 figures stood before him, their presence a quiet menace that filled the space. They were tall, 7 feet at least, maybe more, with elongated limbs and torsos too narrow to support their oversized heads. Their skin shimmered, a refined texture like fish scales caught in sunlight, shifting hues of silver and gray with every subtle movement. They wore robes, or something like robes, that rippled like liquid, defying gravity, defying fabric, a material that seemed to breathe with them. Aaron's stomach twisted, a visceral rejection of their wrongness, their otherness. One stepped forward, its head tilting with a curiosity that felt clinical, detached. It raised a hand, or what passed for a hand, long fingers bending at too many joints, and a panel materialized in the air, a translucent screen alive with symbols that danced and rearranged in patterns too complex to follow. Aaron's brain ached trying to parse them, a throbbing behind his eyes as if the shapes were burrowing into him. Then it spoke. Not with sound but a vibration that sank into his skull, translating itself into words. "You are irrelevant yet necessary." The phrase was clear, alien, its weight pressing against his chest like a stone. Irrelevant yet necessary. What the hell did that mean? A judgment? A sentence? Before he could form a response, a metallic arm extended from the wall, swift and silent, clamping a cold, circular device around his wrist. The metal bit into his skin, unyielding, its surface humming faintly against his pulse. Another arm darted toward his neck, a probe-like needle gleaming at its tip. It struck, injecting something that burned like liquid fire, a searing path through his veins before fading to a numb, creeping void. Aaron cursed, a choked, "God damn it," that echoed weakly in the sterile air. But his body refused to move, pinned by an invisible force that mocked his strength. The tallest figure tilted its head again, studying him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. "We seek equilibrium," it said, the vibrations sharp and precise. "Your kind disrupts this." Aaron's voice rasped out, distant even to himself. "What the hell are you talking about?" The creature paused, as if his question required recalibration, then answered, "Resource depletion. Aggression. You threaten balance. Assessment required." The words hung there, clinical, incomprehensible. Were they talking about climate change, humanity's slow chokehold on the planet? War, the endless cycle of violence etched into history? Or something bigger, something beyond his grasp? His mind raced, a frantic scramble for meaning, but the answers slipped away like sand through his fingers. Before he could press further, the device on his wrist tightened, a vise of cold metal sending sharp, electric pain shooting up his arm. His vision blurred, fracturing into a kaleidoscope of light and shadow, and then the flood came. Flashes of images, memories, dreams, moments he'd buried or forgotten. His first truck, the smell of diesel and leather. A bar fight in Elko, blood on his knuckles. His mother's voice, faint and fading from childhood. It was like they were downloading his existence, ripping it apart frame by frame, a violation so intimate it left him gasping. One of the figures moved closer, its shimmering form brushing the edge of his vision. "Why do you persist?" it asked, the vibration tinged with something like curiosity, a scientist probing a specimen. Pain flared, sharpening his focus, and Aaron snapped. "Because we're human. That's what we do." The words were raw, defiant, a lifeline thrown into the void. The alien leaned back, its robe rippling like water disturbed by a stone, and another panel materialized. This one showed images he couldn't fully comprehend. Earth, blue and fragile, overlaid with alien symbols and grids. Then other planets, barren and desolate, their surfaces scarred with craters and ruins, some bearing faint echoes of the triangular craft hovering above the desert. "You've done this before?" Aaron muttered, dread sinking into his marrow like lead. The tallest figure tilted its head again. "Observation, correction, preservation," it said. "Your kind will adapt or cease. The fight for freedom. You're deciding that?" Aaron spat, his voice trembling with rage and fear. "Who made you the boss of the universe?" The response was instant, a cold blade of sound in his mind. "We are the balance." The words carried no emotion, no malice, just a statement of fact, as if their authority was as natural as gravity. Argument was pointless. These things didn't think like us, didn't care about individuals, only systems, outcomes, equations too vast for a trucker from Nevada to unravel. Escape became his only thought, a flickering ember of hope in a sea of dread, though it seemed laughable against their power. The pain in his wrist subsided as the device released, its grip loosening with a faint hiss. The aliens stepped back, their examination apparently concluded, their forms retreating into the sterile glow. To his right, a panel glowed faintly, its surface alive with those same incomprehensible symbols, pulsing like a heartbeat. Instinct kicked in, primal and unthinking. He lunged, slamming his hand against it with a force that jarred his arm. Alarms blared, a piercing wail that cut through the silence, making even the aliens flinch. The room's light shifted to a deep, bloody red, the floor vibrating beneath his feet, a tremor that echoed the chaos in his chest. The figures moved toward him, their fluid motions jerky now, almost panicked, a crack in their perfect control. A beam of energy shot past his head, searing the wall with a hiss of molten metal, and Aaron ducked, adrenaline surging as he sprinted toward a widening seam in the wall. An opening, a chance. More beams lit the air, streaks of light that grazed his shoulder, singeing his jacket with a smell like burnt wiring. He dove through, landing hard in a narrow corridor, its walls lined with strange tubes and panels that pulsed faintly, their glow casting eerie shadows. He ran, no direction, no plan, just away. The alien's footsteps followed, light but rapid, an insect-like skittering that sent chills down his spine. The corridor twisted, its curves disorienting, the air thick with a metallic tang that coated his tongue. He rounded a corner and stumbled into a larger chamber, its expanse filled with pods, dozens of them, some open and empty, others holding humans suspended in viscous, amber liquid. Their faces were slack, lifeless, eyes staring into nothing, mouths frozen in silent screams. "Oh hell no," Aaron muttered, the realization slamming into him like a freight train. This wasn't an experiment. This was a slaughterhouse, a gallery of preserved failures. He spotted a control panel, its surface alive with flickering lights, and smashed his fist against it, desperation overriding sense. The pods hissed, draining their liquid in a gurgling rush, the humans inside stirring. Some gaunt and pale, collapsing as the fluid receded, others stumbling free, eyes wide with confusion and terror. "Move!" Aaron shouted, his voice hoarse. "We're getting out of here." A man in his 50s, hair matted with sweat, grabbed his arm, his voice a ragged whisper. "Where are we? Does it look like I have a damn clue?" Aaron snapped. "Just follow me." The group grew as more pods opened, 5, then 10, then a dozen. Shambling figures in tattered clothes, their movements unsteady but driven by the same raw need to escape. The alarm screamed, a deafening cacophony, red lights flashing so fast they blurred into a strobe. An opening appeared ahead, a jagged seam revealing the craft's exterior. The triangular shape loomed above, but the desert ground shimmered below, solid, real. "Go!" Aaron yelled, shoving people forward. They scattered into the night, silhouettes against the sand, as he turned to face the aliens. One emerged from the corridor, its form towering, its hand raised. Aaron braced for a beam, muscles tensing, but it hesitated, tilting its head as if recalculating. "Your resistance is unexpected," it said, the vibration calm despite the chaos. "Yeah, well," he panted, chest heaving, "get used to it." The alien didn't respond, stepping back as the opening began to close. A slow grind of metal on metal. Aaron dove through just before it sealed, the cold night air hitting him like a slap, sharp and grounding. He scrambled to his feet, sand clinging to his hands, and scanned the darkness for the others. Most ran toward the highway, frantic shapes disappearing into the distance, but a few lingered, staring upward as the craft ascended, silent and menacing, its glowing edges cutting through the night. Then, one by one, they collapsed, convulsing, limbs twitching as if something inside had been triggered, a failsafe snapping shut. Aaron ran to a young woman, her hair tangled across her face, but she was gone, her eyes blank, staring at the stars. "No, no, no," he whispered, hands hovering uselessly above her. The craft vanished into the sky, a shadow swallowed by shadow, leaving him alone amid the bodies, the desert silence roaring in his ears. The aftermath and the echoes. Hours later, headlights pierced the dark. State troopers, their radios crackling with static, drawn by reports of a disturbance. Aaron sat on the ground, knees drawn up, surrounded by the fallen, their bodies cold against the sand. He told them everything. The craft, the aliens, the abductions, his voice raw, breaking on every word. They listened, faces etched with skepticism, though the bodies were evidence something had happened, something they couldn't explain away as a trucker's delusion. They took notes, photographed the scene, and hauled him to a station in Tonopah, where he repeated the story under fluorescent lights that buzzed like flies. In the weeks that followed, Aaron dug deeper, driven by a need to understand, to prove he wasn't crazy. He found scattered reports, disappearances near remote highways, bright lights in the sky, patterns too consistent to dismiss. A farmer in Utah, gone missing in '97, his tractor left running in a field. A hiker in Arizona, 03, her campsite scorched in a perfect circle. A trucker in Oregon, 05, babbling about a triangular craft before vanishing from a hospital bed. Whispers online, in forums buried beneath layers of conspiracy noise, spoke of beings who observed, experimented, eliminated, custodians of a balance humanity couldn't comprehend. Aaron keeps moving now, a nomad in a pickup older than his story. His rig sold off after that night. Every bright light in the sky twists his gut. Every hum sets his teeth on edge. "They're not done," he says, his voice a gravelly warning, weathered by years of sleepless nights. Maybe they never will be. His tale isn't unique. Others have brushed against this cosmic edge, their accounts threading a tapestry of dread across decades and deserts, a chorus of voices crying out against the silence. The witnesses speak. Consider Clark Evers, a civil engineer from Pine Creek, Oregon, 2002. He was renovating a hunting cabin with his friend Todd. A weekend of hard work meant to end in whiskey and starlight. They parked Todd's beat-up truck in a meadow, lying on the hood with beers, the Oregon sky a ridiculous sprawl of constellations. A light streaked across it, too slow, too large for a shooting star, then stopped, hovering, deciding. It shot downward, a metallic egg glowing blue, and the meadow lit up like midday, static crackling in the air. The truck lifted, an invisible hand plucking them skyward, and Clark's yells drowned in a low-frequency hum. Aboard, gray-skinned beings with spindly limbs and seamless uniforms dissected a stranger on a table, instruments hovering with surgical precision. Todd bolted, only to freeze mid-step, suspended like a marionette before collapsing lifeless. Clark smashed a panel in desperation, alarms blaring as he crashed a shuttle back to Earth, landing in the meadow with a small, symbol-etched device as his only proof. Todd's body never returned, the cabin left abandoned, its roof half repaired. Or Elias Concade, 2019, camping in White Sands, New Mexico. A solo road trip after a messy divorce. His tent pitched near the dune's edge, the ranger's warning about the desert swallowing people a half-heard joke. A hum cut through the midnight quiet, growing closer, heavier, until figures, tall, impossibly thin, their bodies shimmering like liquid metal, glided from a pulsating light. They yanked him aboard, his limbs puppet by an unseen force, their featureless forms probing his mind and body. He woke to shredded gear and a dead biologist, Malcolm Sturgis, slumped against his car, throat slit, a cold message. Forums later whispered of similar fates of those not returned, dissected or erased. Carter DT, a trucker in Kingman, Arizona, 2018, ran on caffeine and dad rock until his headlights died on a detour. Glowing orbs circled him, lifting him into a ship of shifting walls, creatures with stone-like skin speaking of genetic convergence. He slashed at them with a utility knife, escaping as his rig flickered back to life, a glowing cut on his arm, a lingering mark. A family vanished nearby that week, their car found empty, search teams baffled. Damon Cahill, 1997, a surveyor in South Dakota's Black Hills, found bent markers and a contorted deer carcass before metallic-cloaked figures paralyzed him. They scanned him on a platform, debating genetic degradation, until hunters intervened, one dying to buy Damon's escape. His Jeep bore claw marks, the forest silent until dawn. Caleb Dreyer, 2009, a mechanic on a Texas detour, saw lights hover above the road, waking aboard a ship with elongated beings assessing compatibility. He fled through a pod-filled chamber, crashing a craft back to Earth, a shard of alien metal his keepsake. 3 locals vanished that night, their bodies later found mutilated. Adrian Blackburn, 2000, a trucker near Tucumcari, New Mexico, felt his rig shudder under a beam, waking on a slab as obsidian-skinned beings drew blood. He slashed free with a metal shard, landing back on the highway, black fluid staining the sand. A fellow abductee's body was never found. Victor Darnell, 2017, a photographer in Yukon's boreal forest, tracked a whine to a silvery figure that tore his camper apart. It spoke of viability, scanning him before he escaped, a pulsing marble left behind. 3 others vanished that week, their fates unknown. The pattern of the unseen. These accounts, spanning Nevada to Yukon, Oregon to Texas, share a chilling thread. Lights that don't blink, hums that rattle bones, beings of impossible form with a cold, clinical intent. They call themselves surveyors, gatherers, remnants. Names that shift but converge on a truth. They're here, watching, testing. Some claim they preserve, pruning humanity for a greater design. Others see exploitation, a harvest of flesh and soul. Evidence piles up, scorched circles, mutilated remains, alien devices, dismissed by authorities who'd rather not look, filed as hoaxes or unsolved mysteries. What's their endgame? Equilibrium, they say, correcting a species that disrupts, a planet that teeters. But correction for whom? Preservation of what? The witnesses carry marks. Burns, cuts, fragments of alien tech. Proof that lingers when official reports fade. The desert, the forest, the highway. They're stages for a play we don't understand, actors we can't name. So, reader, listener, what about you? Ever felt a hum you couldn't place? A light that didn't fit the night? Driven a lonely road and sensed the air thicken? The stars sharpen into something watchful? These aren't campfire tales. They're echoes of a truth too vast to bury, too close to ignore. The long shadow of Highway 95. Aaron Winstone's night on Highway 95 wasn't the end. It was a window cracked open, a glimpse into a shadow that stretches beyond Nevada's sands. The desert keeps its secrets, but it doesn't hide them well. Those who've seen the lights, felt the hum, carry a weight no one else can fathom. A knowledge that the night isn't empty, that the silence isn't safe. These aliens don't invade with fanfare. They observe, they correct, they balance, and they leave us grasping at questions with no answers. Next time you're out there, tires humming on asphalt, the world too quiet, ask yourself, what's watching from the dark? If you see a light that doesn't blink, a shadow that doesn't belong, will you stop to look or keep driving, praying it doesn't follow? Aaron didn't have a choice. Neither did Clark, Elias, Carter, or the rest. Their stories linger, a warning etched in the dust of forgotten roads, a plea to look up, and maybe, just maybe, to stay off Highway 95 after dark. This is the forbidden excavation, digging where others won't, unearthing truths too strange to stay buried. The desert's waiting. What will you find?